Hello, everyone. I hope you all had a wonderful Easter. So I wish you all a blessed Easter time, that you all had a safe time with your families. And yeah, good to be back. So yeah, I was with my family this weekend. It was really wonderful. And but today I want to talk about a topic that I was asked to do by a couple of my subscribers. It has come up on occasion due to various discussions, and especially last year I did a discussion with Thunderous One, and the request came up, and I thought, since I had some time this evening, let me do so. So tell you what, let me just double check that everything is streaming correctly, and we'll dive right in. Okay, yeah, looks like we're live on X. We should be live on Rumble, and I'm going to assume that we are live on YouTube. Yep, looks like we're live on X and Rumble. Right, so welcome, Dragon. Good to see you. Blessed Easter Monday to everyone. Yeah. Today we want to talk about the issue of crime. So, how do you identify when a crime is about to happen? Can you predict a crime before it occurs? Are there signs and things that you can look for to help you to be safer? And are you aware that physical violence, physical assault, is only the fourth stage in a five-stage process, which means that the first three stages are non-violent and can thus be dealt with in a non-violent manner. So, how do you learn to read the signs? How do you learn to predict and prevent violence before it occurs to you? Shalom. So, yeah, I should have contacted Thunderous. Wait, give me 1 second. Let me let Thunderous know. Let me send him a message and okay, so I've sent him a text. Let's see what happens. But let me dive in. Let me start here. So I'm going to start with a summary. This is a project that I launched many years ago. I've taught this in South Africa. I've taught this around the world. And we want to recognize and avoid crime before it occurs. Welcome, Philip. Yes, sadly, this is one of the reasons people actually asked me to discuss this particular topic, because no one would get nervous if they heard namaste or Christ is king. No one's going to be concerned that at that point suddenly the bomb goes off. But unfortunately, if you heard the words Allahu Akbar shouted loudly in a confined space or in public, you would look nervously over your shoulder and get ready to run, no doubt. But yes, it does seem to be a clue. So welcome, everyone. Okay, so let's hope Thunderous can pop in. I should have contacted him sooner, but let's see. Let's hope he gets it. And let me just let me copy the link, send it to him in case he is able to join. So I've sent him the link. All right. So we are not soldiers. We are not secret agents. We are not special forces operators. And this is not our context as civilians. So we want safety that is rational for us. So we might have family that we need to protect. So we've got to think beyond winning. We need to think, how do we prevail? As a civilian, our context is to recognize and avoid, to escape without harm, not to engage and win and then potentially suffer massive legal consequences afterwards. Hello, everyone. Yes, shalom to everyone. So blessed Easter Monday to everyone. So, and yes, J. Alfred Prufrock, Christ is risen. God bless everyone. All right, let's continue. So, self-defense is not about fighting. It is about not being hurt by physical violence. Now, once you understand the nature of violence, then you no longer need to live in fear. What we need are reasonable precautions, beginning with a view of safety as multi-layered. You have to think about, as we will describe, that there are different rings that you need to understand what's relevant within each. And if you have multiple rings that he's got to work his way through. He's just going to get annoyed, get exhausted, get tired. He's got too many pitfalls that he's got to navigate before he can get to you. He'll give up and find someone else. All right. So the greater the number of layers of effort that a would-be criminal must make their way through, the more difficult it is to target you. Now, I used to teach this to people. I've worked with people in high-risk occupations. I've used this myself in high-risk work. And this is really, really important. Because if you go back to someone, take a man like John Boyd, famous for the OODA cycle, which has been bastardized, misrepresented, and oversimplified to the point of near uselessness. But if you take the major strategist, the best strategist of the 20th century, John Boyd, he was an instructor at Top Gun, I believe. He changed the emphasis of the school from gunnery, which is how to shoot. Think of the self-defense equivalent or hand-to-hand equivalent of how to punch, to how to prevail, superior tactics, how to predict, how to outmaneuver, outthink, outplay the opponent. That is very different than knowing how to punch, because there's a lot more here. We want to work, how do we prevail, and not just winning, as I mentioned earlier. So this leads to a rapidly increasing likelihood that he will abort and choose someone else much less aware, and thus an easier victim. Few people realize, but incredible studies done on criminals in prisons, when shown videos of people in public, they always select those who are the least aware. They don't choose the smallest person, they don't choose the girl, they don't choose the nerd, they choose the person who is least aware for very good reasons. So time and attention are major deterrents, and this process of working through your multiple layers of defense increases the likelihood of them being caught, being hurt, exposed, and ultimately unsuccessful. Think of this briefly. If I drop you in a pond with a crocodile, that is the apex predator in that environment. If I drop you in the ocean with a shark, great white, that is the apex predator in that environment. It doesn't fear you. It's not going to check to see if maybe you're a threat. It's coming at you, right? Whereas your average criminal is a middle line predator. He is not the apex predator. He's not the lion with you naked in the bush. He can be hurt by you. He can be hurt by his own kind. If he's hurt by you, that means he cannot fulfill his role of feeding himself, let's say, or getting the money that he wants or the drugs he needs, because he can't successfully do that if he's injured. He can't work. He's then at risk of his own because he may be under threat from his own for various reasons and more easily caught. So he's a middle line predator. He has to assess that it's safe to actually make the attack. So let's look at criminal culture. So criminal cultures can differ greatly in many Western, Asian, and African countries. There are differences. There are also similarities. So we want to look at what is similar. Now, there are shortcomings, there are limitations, there are misconceptions in martial arts as a preventative tool. As Mark McYoung says, and he's a very, very wise man, very highly experienced, very smart man, he calls them martial arts and crafts. And sometimes that is exactly what it is. Now, martial arts and weapons are tools and technology of conflict, not of prediction and prevention. And our aim is prediction and prevention. So crime is a process, and you need certain skills for protection. Now, let's start with, this is a summary, and then I'm going to go through another document, which is longer. I will repeat some of this data, but I want to give you the intro. So the triangle of jeopardy, ability, opportunity, and intent. They form a triangle. So this is a rule of thumb for detecting risk. All three elements are required for a crime to occur. And if you see circumstances that can be construed as A, O, or I, ability, opportunity, or intent, look for the rest. Remove any one of these and the crime collapses. Now, briefly, I'll give you an example to illustrate. You're a woman, you're alone, you're walking to a car, you've just left a party. Party's in bright lights, lots of people, busy area. You turn the corner, you're in a quiet street. Trees, bushes, not a lot of people around, it's a bit dark. You're walking to your car, it's 20, 30 meters away, and there's a couple of guys lounging at the car next to yours. They're just lounging there, just for no reason, waiting, and you get an attack of nerves. That is I. You have detected intent. How? Your body has responded, your mind has responded. You've noticed something about their behavior that has made you nervous. Or you've analyzed the situation that could become worse because they have ability. Two men can beat you easily. Two men are a threat. So you've spotted ability. You've also discerned intent. What they don't have right now is the opportunity. You're still 20 or 30 meters away. So you remove opportunity, there is no crime. You go back to the party, you come back with 15 or 20 of your best male friends, and now the 20 of you walk towards the car. They accompany you to the vehicle. Now, the two guys are still there. They have intent. They want to commit a crime, they want to rob somebody, whatever the case might be. They have opportunity because you're physically right there, you're within hand's reach, but they don't have the ability because they're outnumbered 10 to 1. Do you understand how the dynamic works? Ability, opportunity, intent. This is the triangle of jeopardy. Remove any one of these sides, the crime collapses. Now, at a more sophisticated level, there are 5 stages of violent crime. So crime is an emotional process that occurs over time. An attack is the 4th stage in the process, and there are 5 distinct stages that can easily be identified, 3 of which are before the attack. The first one, intent. This is where the perpetrator crosses a mental and emotional boundary. He has a motive, he has a motivation, he wants to do something, he needs something. He's willing to go to a certain length to get this. This changes his behavior from relaxed, from casual to predatory. So the first thing that happens is chemicals get dumped into his bloodstream. His state changes. However, the next thing is he has to deceive. He has got to hide the fact that he's become predatory, that he's looking for something in the environment. He's got to deceive. That's the very next step. Your job is to discern this process. Then there's the interview. This is where the criminal decides if you are safe to attack. Positioning. This is the criminal putting himself or you in a place where he can attack you. If you want to steal my wristwatch, you can't do it from down the street. You have to come to me or bring me to you. Or you have to just blindly walk into a trap. You can't do it from a distance. It's got to be done up close. Attack, intimidation, major threat, that's the 4th stage. The attack is the criminal using force or the threat of force to get what he wants, but he has to successfully navigate the first 3 stages to get to the 4th stage. The 5th stage, which everyone forgets, and I almost guarantee you will, is the aftermath of the assault. And this is potentially the most dangerous stage. Now, during the first 3 stages, if you know and you understand the consistent methods and signs, you can prevent an attack without the use of violence. The first 3 stages are non-violent or potentially pre-violent. This is where the criminal, the violent person, decides whether or not he can get away with it safely. Now, he may want to, he has the intent, but if he doesn't have the opportunity, which is the positioning, he cannot succeed. In the same vein, he's going to make sure he can successfully use violence against you. That's the interview and the positioning. He's going to assess to see if you're a good victim. Then he's going to position himself before he commits himself to act. Once he shows of his ability to succeed and has put you in a position where he can quickly overwhelm you, he will attack. Now, there are certain examples that I can give, and I might repeat these when I go to the second document, which goes into the same topics at much greater depth. Where is that a relevant question? If we can stick to the topic, I would appreciate that, Protestant believer, because I'm not sure that this is a particularly relevant question to the topic. So I'll give an example of situations. Now, I've trained lots of people. I've had lots of excellent feedback on this. And a friend of mine I trained once. Now, she'd been taught to do certain things like look for the hands and look at the eyes and blah, blah, typical things. So I told her to listen to the environment, listen for movement, listen for changes in pattern, and look at, let's just tell her the story. So she's walking with some groceries. She's got 2 bags of groceries in her hand. And she's walking down the street and she's got to turn right and go up a hill about 50 meters to get to a gate, which she has to unlock manually with the key. This is slow because she's got bags filled with groceries and she's got to fiddle for the key and then open the key. 4 black guys come walking towards her, and she gets a vibe about them. So she spots intent. She doesn't necessarily spot something specific that they did, but she might have spotted something almost subconscious, a change in their behavior. They recognized her as in an awkward position because she was about to turn right up the hill. They noticed this and they paused for a split second. They slowed their pace. They looked too long, something. But she picked up something. And this triggered something in her. She recognized the threat. Very often we'll go, I was just, there was nothing, they wouldn't do that. That's one of the very first things we do. We say they wouldn't do that. We make a judgment call. When you make a judgment call like that, that is very possibly you spotting intent and dismissing it. Because when you make a moral judgment call, they wouldn't do it because I wouldn't, then you've probably spotted someone's intent to commit a crime and you've dismissed it based on your own standards, not theirs. So, broken teeth in a hoodie. These stages work like clockwork. Why can people see patterns in Sudan versus South Sudan? What is going on in Nigeria? I wasn't speaking about geopolitical conflict. Now, you may have difficulty understanding interpersonal conflict versus geopolitical conflict involving state actors on large scales involving tens of millions of people. But if you think about it, maybe there's a slight difference between a woman carrying groceries being hounded by four men versus geopolitical conflict in Gaza or Yemen or Syria. There could be a slight difference, but it may be hard to tell. You let me know. If you're trolling, I will ban you, and that will solve the problem. Now, so she turns, she goes up the street, and something triggers. Something triggers, and she realizes when they were walking, there were four of these guys walking. They made a certain noise, and she doesn't hear it anymore. She doesn't hear the footsteps, so she realizes they've stopped. Then she walks further, and she realizes she now hears the footsteps behind her. So she realizes there's a problem. She looks, glances, four black guys walking behind her. So she walks up to the gate. As she's walking up towards the gate, how's she going to fight four guys? She's now in what you might call she's in a fringe area. She's not on the main road. She's turned off the main road. Help is some distance and some time away, enough time for them to rob her and run off. So let me do something that's going to be very important in a moment. So as you know, Muhammad Afridi is one of the entirely dumbest person on the entire internet. So, right. So she's walking. She's got four people behind her, four guys. She doesn't know what to do. Now, I'm not going to go into all the detail because it's very difficult for me to do it without actually having it in front of me and working through the scenarios one by one. But these are things you would recognize from your own life, from your own experience, from things you've heard, things you've seen in real life. So one of the things I told is, look, one of the aims is they want to make you fear. And when you fear, you get all jittery. One of the first things you do, you bundle up that fear. You bundle it up, you push it down, you bundle up. It's just a method of working with your fear. You bundle it up, you push it down. And then I said, you take that bundle of fear and you throw it at them. 2, listen to your gut. In this case, there's a portion of your brain that is designed to look after you. Let it do its job. Don't dismiss it. Let it do its job. So she says what she did was she just stopped. She just stopped dead. She didn't know what to do, but she decided to listen to her gut in this case, and she stopped dead. And she said what was crazy was immediately the four guys behind her stopped dead because they had no idea what was going on. She'd broken the pattern. She'd given them a situation they weren't accustomed to. She'd done something out of the ordinary. So she stopped, she turned around, she looked at them. Now, she didn't look them in the eyes, didn't give them a nasty glance. One of the things that I've been teaching people is to simply use curiosity. Curiosity is not aggression, but it's also not fear. And what happens is you just treat any incoming information as just that, information. Information to be used, information to be acted upon, not something that's going to make you panic. She says that she looked at them, sort of a blank stare, just looking at them with curiosity. And then she realized they were a little bit nervous because they didn't know what to do, and they were waiting for the leader of the group to take action, for him to do something, and he hadn't acted yet, so she had a gap. She says she put her hand on her hip and she looked at these guys, and without verbalizing it, without saying it, because for some of you guys, if you've been in fights, if you've been in conflict, especially you guys in the military, if you've ever been in a situation sometimes in front of someone, in front of an opponent, you may have had that moment where you've got like that telepathy going with that guy. You're having a conversation and you can feel each other out, and you've probably had this before. It's just this full nonverbal conversation going on, and he knows exactly what's happening. And she looked at them and she said she realized they were embarrassed because they were caught. And she looked at them, and in her head, now you do not verbalize this, you don't challenge them, they'll come at you and you lose at that point. She says, in her head, she looked at them and she was wagging her finger in her mind, in her imagination, going, "You naughty, 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 naughty kids." Right? She said she was being ridiculous in her mind, but she was scolding them. She was having this conversation and she had to work hard not to break out in laughter. If she had to ridicule them, she could have incited them. But she says what happened was that they all stopped and they all looked down because they were waiting for the main guy to take the lead, and he didn't know what to do. He was looking at his shoes, so they all started looking at their shoes, and then suddenly she says they kind of just wandered off, and they started scratching in the flower pots and the flower beds, and they started like they'd lost something in the street, and they started milling around awkwardly, and then they just scuttled off down the street. So what you had is you got this shark, this predator that's forming. The gang, they're like a shark and they're coming. But what happens is you've broken the pattern. You've thrown a pattern disruption. Instead of now a gang of four of like mind of this shark, this apex predator coming at you, you've now created four individuals that are concerned about their own safety. They're confused. They're waiting for leadership. The leader has no confidence. He doesn't know what. He's confused. So the rest of the gang becomes confused. So now she basically drove a wedge into that. She used that, and using this idea of shame, throwing that ball of fear, she also took that little ball of fear, threw it at them. This left them feeling nervous while she was utterly confident. She says she was totally confident. She just lost her fear. She was completely in an element there. And she knew, just stay calm, don't do anything. And they simply de-escalated because they were confused, and they de-escalated themselves and they backed off. So, simple story. But you can utilize tools like this to get away from situations, to role play in your own mind, to deal with this. You're creating confusion, you're breaking patterns. And yeah, she was able to walk away from this one safely because of simply doing this kind of role play, imagining in her head. Okay, so they were not confident of their ability to succeed. And so she was able to overwhelm them. So you said intent. She removed their intent. She caused confusion instead of certainty. So rape, mugging, and abduction scenarios, right? These are things that I've trained people to defeat, to deal with non-violently. People that have almost been abducted. So yeah, okay, but let's go. So there's no one single thing that will tell you that you are in danger. Okay, so you need a collective checklist. A single element can be misconstrued, misrepresented, misseen, whatever, or you can explain it away. However, you never get the collective presence accidentally, right? If they're all there, it is intentional. So you get all of these things. This is also important for legal defensibility because, well, I'll get to all of that. So these 5 stages are inherent within crime and violence, and it is important to realize that ability, opportunity, and intent might not occur in that particular order. A violent and selfish man may find himself with the perfect opportunity and ability to commit crime, like rape or any other crime, and suddenly intent appears. I'll give you another example. You at an ATM, it's on a street corner, and there's a blind corner just to your left or to your right, and suddenly 3 guys, not the most savory of characters, just they were out for a stroll. They come out and you're busy pulling the money out of the ATM. Just as they come around, these large men come around the corner, and they were looking for something to do anyway, and they see you there with the money in your hand. You're half a meter away. They can just reach out and take the money from you, and boom, intent appears. Why? Because they have the ability. There's 3 of them, there's 1 of you. The opportunity, because you've got the money right there, and bang, you have intent. All 3 elements of a crime. It's very likely at this point, stage 4 will be reached and they're going to commit the crime unless you make a very sudden intervention. So, but also they're going to be assessing you. They're going to look at their chances. They're going to try and estimate, can I get away with this safely, right? And then, yeah, so there's lots of factors at play. But there are things that you can do to let's just say to drive away the intent. That's something that you want to attack. If you cannot change their ability and you cannot remove the opportunity, you've got to change their intent. That's you've got to affect them up here in their psyche. So now there's no conscious initial decision, but the circumstances develop, maybe unexpectedly. So due to a flaw in their personality, they can decide to act in a violent manner. So you need to check for A, O, and I, ability, opportunity, and intent. So by foiling him, instead of attempting to contest, to get into a fight, you can avoid using violence in all but the most extreme circumstances. And I want to add a quote here. Let us not look back in anger or forward with fear, but around in awareness. Okay, so okay, yeah. So excellent. Let's just leave off the geopolitical situation. Let's go to a more advanced document. This is about 4 pages worth of document. Hopefully you're finding this interesting. And yeah, there's so many things that I do right now. I'm actually busy revising this information because I'm putting together something. I'm discussing with some people, putting something together to teach this, and probably having it translated into Polish. And I'm busy developing some other material as well. So yeah, so this was a good time for me to do this, especially also after I have been asked more than once to do this. So yeah, hopefully you're learning something and getting some value out of this. So do let me know in the chat if this is helpful, and if you have questions, and I'll try to answer. I can't guarantee that I will answer or can answer every single one, but do let me know. So the 5 stages of violent crime, right? So how do you identify if and when you are being set up for a crime? Now look, this is different to someone who's been stalking you for 6 weeks, right? Or someone who's high on drugs, who's lost all rationality and is now coming at you. This is not that situation. Learn to distinguish between these. But those are extreme situations. Those are outliers. Those are not your norms. We're looking here at what is typical. We want to solve the 80% problem, not the 2% problem. So let's see. So how do you identify if you're being set up for a crime? And are you aware that assault is only the 4th stage of a 5-stage process? Because notice we didn't really speak about stage 5. So how do we read the signs, and how do you make the rational decision to avoid the danger? So crime is a process. It has a goal, and it has identifiable stages. Once you know about them, they are often obvious. So imagine you are driving to a friend's house, right? Or imagine you see someone driving. You don't know where they're going. You have no idea. They could go straight, they could go left, they could go right, they could stop immediately, they could go for hundreds of miles. You don't know, right? So at first, as you're driving, you have a very wide choice of options to take, right, to wherever you're going. But the closer that you get to your destination, the more you have to turn here, and the more you have to turn left there, and the more you have to slow down because of speed bumps. So the closer you get to the conclusion of the journey, the more specific your actions, the more clear your actions become, the more you can begin to predict, oh, it's going here, it's going there, he's doing this because of that, right? So if someone starts in LA and he's driving to San Diego, he could be going anywhere once he leaves with his car. But the closer he gets, so if he's going to the mall, as he starts to turn, taking specific exits, taking specific roads, the more you can tell, no, he's not going to the butchery, he's going to the mall. Understand? And as he's walking, as he gets closer, he's walking, you can tell he's not going here, he's going there, because he's taking a certain route that's clearly taking him to a general area. So if you don't take those routes, you don't arrive at your destination. So if a criminal intends to commit a crime, his actions will become more predictable and more recognizable to someone who's aware of the process. There are things that he has to do. If those things are present, you are in danger. Now, if these elements are not present, then there's no possibility of committing a crime. Therefore, you are not in danger. This also is a quality of life issue. So you don't want to live with false fear. You don't want to feed yourself with paranoia. On the other hand, you also don't want to fight someone because he looked at me funny, and then you end up in jail for 3 years with a criminal record, and you leave your family starving at home. So you need to be able to make decisions that are legally defensible. If you've spotted all of the elements and you've done everything you can within each of these three stages, the non-violent or pre-violent stages, to prevent the crime, you can legally argue, look, he did A, he did B, he did C, didn't work. He did stage 2, he did A, B, and C. I tried this, this, and this, didn't work. We went to stage 3. I did A, B, and C. Didn't work. So when you go to stage 4, if you decide that I now need to do some sort of self-defense thing here, you can legally justify it, because you can state exactly what happened, exactly what he did, exactly what you did to de-escalate, to escape, whatever it is, and you can justify what you do here. It is very important that you can legally and morally justify it. Moral justification is just as important, because people who are not confident that they are morally justified often hesitate. Very, very important to know these things. These things will be stumbling blocks, and lawyers, criminals will lie. Lawyers will eat you up in court. Very important. So, if you know the 5 stages, and thank you very much, guys. Yes, if you do like this, please give it a like, leave a comment, leave something in the chat. Do appreciate it, and let your friends talk about this if this is helpful to you. Thank you very much. And also thank you for support. If you do support the channel, I really do appreciate it. So thank you very much. Larata Denenive says, I live in Paris, always super aware in the subway. I don't have any problem to change wagon or seat if I see someone suspicious. Most of the French girls don't do it for the fear to be called a racist snob. Congratulations to you, and that is very smart. Don't get into a lift with some guy that's creeping you out. Don't get shut into a metal box with someone that's creeping you out. That would be suicide. There's another lift. Wait for the next one. Simple. But yes, very good. So if you know the 5 stages, this system gives you an external set of standards to check someone's behavior against. If the collective behavior is present, you are in danger, and you need to take steps to ensure your safety. You need to do this no matter what the person says, since his actions speak louder than words. And actions speak louder than words, and they tell fewer lies. So there's no one thing that will tell you that you are in danger. This is why the collective checklist is reliable. A single element can be an accident. You could have just seen it wrong or misunderstood it, or you can explain it away. You're like, it's not important. However, you're never going to get the collective presence accidentally. If they are, it is intentional. So again, stage 4, when you decide to engage this person, when you do so, you can justify it legally and morally because you were forced there. You can say, I did everything I could, given these 10 things I did to get out of the situation based on his behavior, and I was then forced to take action. You can justify it in a court of law. So is this person or these people acting in a manner consistent with a known threat? So we are not mind readers. We don't read their minds. However, we can make decisions based on actions in comparison to known dangers. That's looking at precedent. J. Alfred Prufrock says, very helpful. Thanks, Lloyd. If someone has been on the receiving end of abuse dynamics for a long time in any context, their sense of danger is miscalibrated. Good point. Good point. Yeah, we want quality of life. We want not to live in fear. We want to simply activate when our instinct, look, once you're trained, once you have an understanding of this, once you've gone through the training, and honestly, I've done this in like 90 minutes. People just switch on and it's with you. Once you've had this knowledge inculcated in you over just a short period, because it's stuff that in a real sense you already know, you will just, boom, something's going on in this environment, look. And then you simply pay attention to what's going on and you'll be more aware. And this, just the fact of your awareness already saves you a lot of risk. So I'm not looking over my shoulder all the time. I'm aware, certainly, but I don't have to live in a state of anxiety. I'm not a bunny rabbit that's afraid that a fox is going to kill it at any second. Understand? But when there are certain things happening, automatically, I'm going to wake up. I'm going to start paying attention, and you start to eliminate things in your environment to determine: should I exit, or am I okay? Did I misread that situation? So that's very helpful. Okay, so as a quick rule of thumb, a crime needs a triangle of opportunity: ability, opportunity, and intent. So ability, let's ask some questions. Does the person have the ability to attack you? Could this person successfully assault you, whether through strength, physical strength, are they stronger, a weapon, or strength in numbers? Many women underestimate male upper body strength and how vulnerable they are to being physically overwhelmed. Opportunity. Does this person have the opportunity to attack you? Are you alone with them, or even in an area beyond immediate help? Are you 20 seconds from assistance? Are you in a darker fringe area away from the lights and people? Could anyone come to your assistance within 20 seconds or less? As many victims have found, you can be robbed in plain view or raped with people in the next room. Criminals train to take people down in 2 seconds, and they'll rob you and be gone with 10 seconds left to spare of that 20. So do understand these are people that are often practiced. Intent. Mentally, is he geared to using violence to get what he wants? Is there motive? So of the three, intent is often the most difficult to define, but it is vital for determining who is a threat. Now, very often the intent will be signaled by your emotional reaction. Your internal reaction will tell you. Very often we dismiss this. Like I mentioned, when you make a moral judgment, no, they wouldn't do that because I wouldn't. But before, this is an almost unspoken subtext, and you'll dismiss it. But catch that thought. When that thought happens, and believe me, it's hard to catch. You probably don't even realize you're doing it. But from now on, listen for it. If you catch it, why are you making a moral judgment? Why are you saying, no, he wouldn't commit a crime against me? Because I wouldn't. So you are making excuses for the other guy. That is intent. Act on it. Start looking for ability and opportunity. So this is literally the difference between going off with someone to talk or being raped. So the fastest way to figure out if you are in potential danger is to look for these three elements. If you see one, look for the others. If you see 2 out of 3, stop whatever you're doing and look for the third. Right? Pay close attention for just a moment. And if you see them trying to develop the third, withdraw from the situation to a safe area. Right? This is easier than using physical violence. And as you will soon see, opportunity often means staying in the area where they can effectively use physical violence against you. And if you do not see these elements, then the odds are that you are safe. You are playing the probabilities, working the percentages. You just want to work them in your favor. Christine, thank you very much. So, LOS Strategy says, for folks that haven't had a life filled with violence, this is wonderful intel. Thank you again for providing awesomeness. No, thank you very much. Really do appreciate. Dragon says, I'm aware of my surroundings when I walk through the streets. Even I live in this safe city. My sixth sense and fearlessness and gift never to get in panic helped me a few times in my life in dangerous situations. Yes, staying calm. Just the fact that you may be calm may mark you as a poor choice of victim. Remember, he's a middle line predator. He's not an apex predator. You could hurt him. You might have a gun, a knife in your purse, a whistle. You could bring attention that can get him identified, that can get him injured. So he's playing a risk. His survival instinct is operating to keep him safe too. With the example I gave earlier of my friend, her name was Bronwyn in Cape Town. Their survival instinct is also operating to protect them. In this case, it was protecting them from embarrassment. So the fact that they went from being the shark, where they just got zoned in and focused on being the predator, to suddenly being confused and lost. And they felt humiliated, embarrassed, like their mother was scolding them. She says she could just see them like fracturing in their brains, like emotion. They went from this emotional high crashing down. So you have adrenaline in your bloodstream, and then suddenly, boom, that adrenaline goes away. When you have that happen, for the guys again, for those who've been in the military, those who've worked in violent scenarios, bodyguards, bouncers, I've worked in those environments. When you get that downer after the adrenaline dump, believe me, it's like it leaves you with the shakes. It's exhausting. It's tiring, right? So for them, that just that physical effect can just take them out of the fight, or their brain goes, "This is not good." And because she dominated by standing still, and they're the ones who took a step back, she signaled dominance by not intimidating them, but because they stepped back because they weren't sure. Their brain took that as them being submissive, and the brain would have then dumped a lot of chemicals into their bloodstream to pull them out of the fight. That says, "We are submissive here. You're the alpha. We're getting out of here." And their brain would have just it's just so you are trying to also trigger, in a real sense, shall we say, unconscious biological reflexes, things that just happen and you're trying to make these things happen so that their brain, their subconscious, pulls them out of the fight. Antonio La Rosa, hallo meneer De Jongh, hoe gaan met jou? Dankie vir alles. Jy's baie welkom. Ding is baie goed, dankie. Baie dankie dat jy vra. Nou, ek hoop alles is baie goed met jou ook. And again, for everyone who's here, Happy Easter. I hope you had a wonderful, blessed Easter to everyone. Okay, so now the 5 stages of violent crime. So this is a bit of a repetition, but also an expansion on the same content. So these are processes that take time to develop. The attack is not the first step. There are 5 stages that are easily identified. We've gone through them: intent, interview, positioning, attack, reaction. This can be the most dangerous stage, besides number 4. During the first 3, you can prevent an attack without the use of violence. Okay? These are where the criminal or the violent person decides whether or not he can get away with it. He may want to, having intent, but he doesn't have the opportunity, the position, thus he cannot succeed. So, intent. He crosses a normal mental boundary, one that we as normal, healthy people don't do. Non-criminal people, non-violent people, we don't do. From this point, this person is mentally prepared to commit violence or some sort of crime, some sort of action to get what he wants. So often a person who has decided to commit a physical assault is either looking for an excuse to attack or is trying to hide their intentions until they're in position. Now, on this point, when they are hiding their intentions, what happens is we have what is called non-verbal leakage that comes off. You're suppressing certain emotions, that there are certain issues going on in your mind, chemicals in your bloodstream, actions in your body, things that you're suppressing. But these do leak out. They can be sensed. And you have to become adept at simply just passively reading these things and eventually actively responding when you sense this, so that you can sense this non-verbal leakage and you can go, hold on, something's wrong here. You're spotting intent by your reaction, your emotional reaction. Intent can be pre-planned or an emotional reaction to the circumstances. It can be calculated, as in a criminal assault, or something else. It is the something else that is the most confusing to untrained people. However, even when it doesn't follow a predictable pattern, don't get caught up in the current yourself. Even when it's something you don't expect, it still follows predictable patterns. We are wired in a certain way. Humans behave typically in a certain way because violence is a narrow spectrum of human behavior. Right? We could do a million things, but when you decide to engage in violence, it's a narrow spectrum of behavior. Again, we're at the point where he's driving to the mall, and you can tell he's going to the mall because he's taking these roads now. There's no mistaking where they're going, right? So don't get caught up in the current so you don't realize what's happening. Just be calm, be aware, be curious. If in doubt, just be curious. Treat everything as, I'm curious. It's just information. It's nothing to be afraid of. So violence is both a psychological and physiological extreme. So before someone is ready to commit it, he has to move into this mental or emotional state. Now, of course, if you're dealing with a psychopath, they may or may not have this they may not show this because they can go violent like this, but this is not the norm. We're talking the exception. But we want to deal with the large majority of issues. So violence doesn't just happen out of nowhere. For those of you is anyone in the chat who's worked in pubs as a bouncer? Very often you can tell this nonsense is going down minutes or even long hours sometimes before. You can just tell, like, look, there's something brewing here. You can see it's going down. It's like you just know what's going to happen. Anyone who's had that experience, just please drop your thoughts. Or anyone else who's seen things like that or has noticed, drop it in the chat. It'll be interesting to know. So Philip says, if you survive the attack, no need to pursue an assailant once contact is broken. Yeah, sometimes this is a hard step for us. I've had training. Survival is a win. I wound up in court pleading my case. Exactly. Thank you, Philip, for mentioning that. Yes. Remember I said prevail, not win. Winning typically means beating the guy, physically competing with him and beating him, knocking him out cold, and you can go, yeah, I'm the winner, I'm the champion. This is not the aim for civilians. This is not your goal. To prevail means to escape without harm. To prevail means to avoid before harm even arises. So to recognize and avoid and exit. Otherwise, to de-escalate and exit. Actually engaging is the final thing that you do because you are forced there. Preferably, you will then take him out before he attacks you, but you've justified it. You've justified this, and you will then take him out. But then the whole point is to minimize harm. You are acting first to minimize risk to yourself. If you're a smaller person, a smaller man, a smaller woman against an athlete or someone who may be armed, it is advisable to go first. You can justify this legally and morally because you're minimizing risk to yourself, because there was no avoiding it anymore. This guy was going to go ballistic any moment. But you took him down to minimize risk to yourself in harm, and you minimized risk and harm to him. The longer the conflict drags on, the more likely there's going to be damage on both sides, the more harm to both sides. But if you go first, you minimize risk to yourself or harm to yourself, and you minimize harm to him. So that, again, legally justifiable. But if you decide to pursue and then get into, you end up in court, and that is expensive and painful. So, So even a habitually violent person has to mentally prepare themselves. It may happen very quickly, but it is not instantaneous. Only in cases of severe mental instability or maybe like serious psychopathy will a person be able to instantly flash into violence. And such a person would almost certainly be locked up in a mental ward, although maybe not in Joe Biden's America, because these days they probably just turn into women. So it might appear that violence suddenly comes from nowhere. However, this is not the case. Often we just haven't seen it occurring. We just haven't seen the buildup. So often it's just a matter of you not recognizing the danger signals. So a series of specific circumstances have to have been put in place. When they are in place, violence occurs. Acts like getting drunk or angry are used as an excuse for committing violence. Knowing about these mental processes serve as an early warning system. If someone shows up in the wrong place at the wrong time and in the wrong state of mind, something is off. So it is suspect. And if a normal situation begins to spin out of control, look for danger signs. Fortunately, despite surface appearances, many times there is enough nonverbal leakage coming from an attacker to warn you that something's amiss. Learn to trust your feelings. One of the things we would work with, whether guy or girl, you're walking up on a situation, things aren't looking good, you stick your hand behind your back. He doesn't know if you've got a weapon there. He doesn't know what you've got. You could just literally be holding your hand behind your back. You put your hand inside your jacket. Especially low down by your belt. They don't know, but that's going to give them pause for thought, and you back away, you get away, you walk away. He doesn't know. So you do things that are familiar with that's going to cause doubt. So remember, he's mentally escalating, he's emotionally escalating. You throw a spanner in the works. You do something that he now has to recalculate. He's got to factor in something. So he goes from emotional to intellectual. He goes from wanting to do harm. He goes from rage, building up to being the shark, to suddenly balancing a checkbook, doing mathematics, doing sums. You cannot do rational calculation when you're in this phase of your mind. These are different parts of your brain. You're making them switch off the emotional brain. You're making them switch on the nerd brain. The nerd brain doesn't do violence. The emotional brain does, to try to simplify the situation. But also, he's got to let go of his emotional state, but also he's got to let go of the hormones he's been dumping into his bloodstream, all of the adrenaline, exhaustion, that starts to make him tired. That up and down makes you tired. And eventually his brain just goes, damn it, no, I'm tired, I'm done. Let's just leave this one. Okay? So this is kind of what we're doing. We're de-escalating. So it's not just about talking to someone, but it's about taking them out of one frame of mind, putting them in another. Now he's got to recalculate. What does that mean? What does that mean? He's asking questions. He's no longer dominant. He's asking questions. Make him ask questions. You don't have to physically ask him a question. What is the orbital velocity of the moon? He's going to laugh at you and punch you in the face. But you're doing things, you're breaking the pattern, introducing factors that he's going to now recalculate with. You're resetting him, and he's going, what was that? Now he's got doubt. Now he's got uncertainty. But he's not the shark that was planning to come over like an apex predator and bite you. Hopefully that makes sense. So often it is your subconscious recognizing the physiological danger signals that he displays. So when your alarms go off, even if the situation looks normal, start looking for the next two stages to develop. Now, of course, you don't want to be paranoid, but stop, pay attention, look aware. Awareness alone will save you from a lot of harm. Just the fact that you're aware, they will disqualify you as a victim, and they'll move on to the next one. Interview. The criminal decides you are safe to attack. Ave Maria says, If they don't let the loonies out and contain the smart ones, nobody. Yeah, well, yeah, I'm not going to accuse the Democrats of acting sane. So Jason James says, great info, Lloyd. I grew up in an urban area in London as a minority, English. Yeah, yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, England, that Muslim country. I had to learn a lot of this the hard way from childhood. Yeah, no, this is common sense, but yeah, it's something that you grow up as well. If you've lived in those places, then you kind of know this stuff. So the assailant's safety is a critical factor in deciding whether or not to attack. Can I get away with it? Is a major motivation for what people decide to do. Hence, they interview you. So there's one. This is an interview. You want to fail. If you do fail, the assailant decides that he cannot successfully or easily attack you. Then, if he's a criminal, he will proceed to seek easier prey. In the case of an emotionally upset individual, he will change tactics. But this buys you time. At the very minimum, you're trying to buy time. You're trying to change the situation to one of some advantage to you. If you have to engage, if you're being herded into a situation where you're forced to engage, at least you can try to modify the situation, manipulate it into one where you act, he acts on your cues, and you will move or he will move when you deem it the right time for your best advantage. So, for example, if instead of physically assaulting you, he will proceed to stand back and verbally abuse you. This allows him to win without putting himself at physical risk. So let him win. It's okay. Walk away. At least he wins. But no harm to you. You get to go home to your kids without harm. You get to not get locked up in prison for manslaughter. Very important. There are 5 basic types of interviews. So the one a criminal uses depends more on his personal style, etc., than anything else. The regular interview, the most common form of interview for muggers. The criminal will approach you under the guise of normalcy, needing information, asking for a match, asking for the time, asking directions, then he suddenly asks for money, and so on. This is a distraction. So while he's talking, he's not only getting in position to attack, he's now approached you, he's positioned himself, he can now take you out, but he's checking your awareness about what he's doing. Do you know the game? Do you understand the game? Do you know the language? Do you know how to play? Right? And your commitment to defending yourself. For instance, I'll give you an example. I've had people come up on me, and the simplest thing that I've taught to people is you just say, "No, stop." So you make sure he's some distance away while they're still a couple of meters out. You spread out your fingers like this. You don't go, "You bugger." No, just reach out your hand and just say, "Stop." Right? And then immediately glance over your shoulders. You're letting him know. You're creating a boundary. You're creating a boundary. You're telling him, I am enforcing a boundary. And he knows now that if he crosses that boundary, the risk is that you are going to act. Because now he doesn't have a victim. Now he's got someone that is alert and aware and could harm him. Now the question is, does he want to escalate or not? And the chances are unlikely. You're enforcing a boundary, saying, stop. Okay? Any normal person is going to stop. Anyone who keeps coming is a threat. You are then justified in dealing with that threat because no human being is going to walk up on you if you're intimidated and you're a woman, you're a grandmother, and you say stop and this guy just keeps coming. You can say, hold on, I asked him politely to stop. I showed him that I was nervous and he kept coming, so I pepper sprayed him in his face, and too bad for him. Understand? Anyone who will break that boundary shows disrespect, and that is a risk to you. When you look over your shoulders, right, even if it's just a short glance like that, you are automatically showing that you're aware that he may have buddies coming up on you. He's just a distraction. He knows you know how to play the game. You're just sending a signal. I know how to play the game. We know what's going on. Stick your hand behind your back. Stick your other hand behind your back. He doesn't know if you're pulling a knife out of your back pocket. So understand, this is not to say you have one or intend to use one, nor am I recommending that, but you're just creating doubt in his head. You're making him ask questions. So instead of him going emotional, he now has got to start doing maths. You want him doing maths, not thinking about feeding. Understand? So does this all make good sense for everyone? Let me just see. Glad to hear it. Thank you, and blessed Easter to you too, RKM. Finally, being an introvert and spending my life observing people has an advantage. You're welcome. Great to have you. Conociendo al Islam. Welcome. Oh, wow. Thank you very much, Christine. Thank you very much. Yeah, sorry, I can't see the character, the emoji, but thank you very much, the animation. So, but thank you very much, Christine. I really appreciate it. Thank you. So, now when you say stop, you've got a barrier. He knows if he comes closer once he comes into your personal space, he knows he's now alerted you and you are aware. because you are a middle line predator just like him. You could hurt him. So now he will probably then his survival instinct, because you've broken the pattern, is likely to pull him out of the fight, right? So those are one of the things that can happen. So so he's getting into position. He's checking your awareness. He's checking your commitment. When you say no, stop. Okay. Then the next thing I would tell people to do is you say no, stop. You ask, what do you want? And you'd be amazed how these bad guys have no idea why they are there. You ask them, what do you want? And he goes, uh, 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 and out of shame and embarrassment, he turns around and walks away because he has no idea why he's there. He never expected to be interrogated on the question, on his actions, right? So you'd be amazed how that just like throws them for a loop and they walk away, right? Because he's not there for a cup of sugar, for sure. Okay, he's not going to say, I want a cup of sugar. Seriously, it's embarrassing. And also, you've taken his confidence away. He's gone from, yeah, I got this, to like, why am I here? I didn't think about that. What am I going to say? But if he escalates, then you know you have a problem and you get ready. Understand? So he might also be testing your boundaries, but there's going to be a limit where he's going to test them, and at some point he'll back off. So you say no, and you insist on him keeping his distance. Muggers and strangers will often use this techniques. Okay, stranger rapists. Hot interviews are sudden and unexpected. These are emotional blitzkriegs, right? They pop out of nowhere. You're minding your own business 1 minute, and the next you have a threatening, shouting, screaming person charging down on you. So the success of this strategy is on being unaccustomed to dealing with extreme emotional violence and then reacting in a stunned and confused manner. This happened to someone I know. He was an elderly man. He got jumped outside of his office. Some guy just came up on him and just started harassing him, probably asking for money, screaming and shouting. Basically, you got money, give me money, give me money. And the guy just kept just going ape. And they hope people will just throw money down and run away, right? And my friend just turned around and said, no, right? And just said no, and he just shoved him away. And the guy was stunned. I mean, weirdly enough, he took the same actions, the same attitude. He just escalated above the other guy. Sometimes you have to be ready to escalate faster. So there's a pinnacle. If you think of this way, this is just a way to visualize this, to think about this. There's one spot for dominance. There's one little circle. In these two competing humans, there's one circle, one spot where you've achieved dominance. So he's escalating. He's building himself up to get to the point where he can trigger, and you just get there first. Just put yourself there first. Just be prepared to get there first. Just go there first, act first. And when you've taken that spot and you shove him out of it, very often he realizes you've achieved dominance, you've achieved the readiness to go ballistic, as it were, before him. His own survival instinct will pull him right out of the fight. I've seen this happen. Ponder that. So you must be willing to immediately shift into an extreme of physical violence. This doesn't mean you do violence, just be willing. Just the fact that you are showing willingness, his own survival instinct will recognize this, and it will try to protect him. It will withdraw him subconsciously out of the fight. So if you can display this commitment immediately, the attacker will often abort. And this has been my experience. From working professionally, this has been my experience. Just turn and say, no, go away, or no, stop. Typically just one word, like stop or no. And just a direct push, because they're in your space. You just stand your ground and you project yourself. Again, that little ball of nerves that I told you about, just throw it at them, right? You'll find that actually has an amazing effect. Escalating, unlike a hot interview that starts out immediately hostile, an escalating interview starts out normally, but rapidly turns hostile. The person, one point on this, you see, because you, just Janice says, stand your ground. There's some truth to that, but you are standing ground. He takes a step or two back. This is a signal to his mammalian brain that he has been submissive. The one who looks away, the one who goes and backs off, that is the submissive one. You are acting dominant without being a bully, without inciting or provoking. You are demonstrating strength. He backs off. His own brain, because it's a biological trigger that's hardwired into you. His own brain tells him, okay, he's dominant. You are the submissive one. Let's go home now. Understand? His own brain triggers because he took a couple of steps back, right? So because of that unconscious action, his own brain de-escalates him emotionally, physically, and he just realizes he's walking away, and a few seconds later he realizes, holy moly, I'm just leaving. How did that happen? It's That's kind of what you're trying to do. You're trying to trigger this kind of response. Hopefully that makes some good sense. Yeah, do not dissociate. Yeah, look, go blank if you have to, in the sense that just look at this thing with blankness, or better, curiosity. But yeah, don't. But yeah, your life is important because there are people depending on you. So your life is important enough just for your own sake. But you are going to prevail. You're going to survive. You're going to get away. So unlike the hot interview, which is immediately hostile, an escalating interview starts out normally but rapidly turns hostile. They test your boundaries by escalating outrageous behavior. If he's not slapped down, okay, if he's successful, his behavior becomes more and more extreme until he attacks. This is a very common interview for date rapists. It's also common when you walk into the middle of a group of loitering young thugs who supposedly just starts out just messing with you, right? And this then escalates into robbery or assault, sometimes both. They're not always hard, easy answers for this. Sometimes you've got to flow with the situation, trust your instincts, and just respond with what feels right in the moment. Trust your instincts in this. Don't question. When that engine starts up, when that thing starts doing its thing, those of you who've been in a situation, when your brain just when you're in that flow, just trust it. Let it do what it does. It'll get you out of there. It is doing everything it can to get you out of there. Don't override it. Just go with it. You will do what you need to do, because sometimes you just got to let go, move with it, and you will do all the right things, and you'll find yourself stepping away safely, no harm done. It happens. You can't always have a clear answer, but you've got to trust yourself sometimes. The silent interview. Criminal puts himself in a position to observe you. Listen to your gut feeling. Yes, that's a very good point. Yeah, in that sense. Sometimes you have to listen to your gut. A well-informed gut, a trained gut. But yeah. Fight flight might work. Freeze fawn is unlikely. So yeah, fight flight is kind of actually there's actually fight flee is not really accurate. Fight flee freeze. It's actually fight, flee, freeze, posture, and submit. We don't want to submit. If we do submit, it's a fake submit because we're about to lay him out cold. All right? Or you're about to turn the tables on him. So it's a fake submit to get him to feel confident, to bring him in. You are doing what he does to you. You are faking to, in this case, win, right? Because you're going stage 4 because there's no other choice now. But it's fight or flight, fight, flee, freeze, posture, submit. Posturing is, yeah, my daddy can beat up your daddy. Yeah, you don't want to go there. You don't want to play that game. That just leads to escalation, because the essential nature of violence is that it escalates. You don't want it to escalate. You want to de-escalate. You want to be seen and heard to be de-escalating. Again, defensibility in a court of law. Keep this in mind. Escalation is what violence does. He could have friends you might not have seen. His friends could be on the way. Be very careful. He could have weapons you have not seen. Be very careful. You could accidentally push him. He trips. He hits his head against the cupboard, somewhere sharp, the pavement. He dies. Manslaughter. These things happen. Be very careful. So the silent observer, he's observing you. He doesn't speak until the attack, but he's been watching you all along. He may position himself out of sight in a parking structure and follow you. Or he may make his presence known and decide to attack you if you show fear of his presence. So that's very similar to what happened to my friend, who had these 4 guys following her. It kind of leans in that direction. And she dealt with it silently. They never spoke. Nothing was ever said, right? Everything was just this non-verbal, telepathic discussion that she was having, this role-playing in her brain, that's all. And the prolonged interview, this is anywhere from mere moments to weeks, right? And think of this as stalking, but this is really kind of outside of our scope. So, positioning. The criminal puts himself in a place where he can successfully attack you. Okay? The criminal, or even the violent person, doesn't want to fight you. They want to overwhelm you. They want to win. They want to take you down, rob you, and leave, typically. To do this, he has to put himself in a position where he can do it quickly and effectively. Positioning is the final proof. If they're positioning themselves, you have a crime that's very likely to happen. This means that whatever intervention you do is going to have to be fast and potentially extreme, and might even cause violence, or you might have to do violence as your intervention. So someone trying to position himself to attack removes all doubt that the situation is innocent. When I said, when you say stop and someone keeps coming, they're positioning. Now you can prove in a court of law that, look, there was legitimate reason to think I was under threat, so I took action. So a key point of positioning is fringe areas. You'll seldom, if ever, be robbed or raped in the middle of a crowd. A fringe area is where you're close to people, but out of range of immediate help. You're not mugged in the mall, but you will be in the parking lot or the bathroom. Those are fringe areas. Close to people, but not in the bright lights. Not obvious. ATMs, parking lots, stairwells, public bathrooms, and sidewalks are potential danger areas. Even a separate room in a crowded house can be a fringe area. I know people who've been raped in the upstairs bedroom because they went off with some dude and everyone's having a party downstairs. So as many women who are raped at parties can attest, being alone with someone in a fringe area is a major part of the opportunity element of the triangle of opportunity. That's AOI. So positioning, closing, the most basic form of positioning is simply walking up to the victim. The closer they get, the greater their ability to overwhelm and control. If you turn around and there's suddenly someone in your face, you're in shock. And they have emotionally overwhelmed you. So that emotional shock alone disables you, it freezes you, and boom, they've got you. 5 feet is the closest you should allow someone you don't trust to approach in a fringe area, right? And the 5 feet here that he uses, I believe, is because there's a typical give me 5 feet thing in American prisons. So, I mean, use as much space as you need, otherwise just work with what space you have, right? Whether you know this person or not, if the person insists on coming closer after you've warned them away, they have announced that their intentions are not good. Cornering or trapping, second most basic form of positioning, and the most common. He approaches you from a direction, right? And he traps you between himself and a large object. But the important thing is he's putting himself between you and the exit. You may have to go through him. So make a note of people putting themselves between you and your exit. Very important to note. Surprise. This is your classical jump out of the bushes type position. So the criminal puts himself in a place where you don't see him, or if you do, it's very last minute. So from this position, you can step out and attack. Once you know these locations, this kind of positioning is very easy to deal with. Okay, let me see if I've missed any questions or comments. I have to head out now. Glory to God, but take care, everyone. Wishing you all a joyful and blessed Easter Monday. No, thank you. All right, pincer. Criminals often work in pairs or triplets or packs, right? So you don't always face just one. That's why I said earlier, when you tell the guy to stop, look over your shoulder. Even if it's just a cursory glance, just to, one, you want to be sure you don't have others sneaking up on you, but you're letting them know how the game is played. So the most common maneuver for two criminals is the pincer. One circles around while the other distracts you. You should always be aware of individuals splitting up when they approach you. For instance, you have the wings folding up maneuver. You walk past someone who's leaning against the wall, but his buddy is 10, 20 meters down. And when you get to the middle, the guy behind follows you, and the one in front comes up to you, and they start trapping you between them. So two characters face each other in a narrow walkway, and you've got to go between them, right? A third trick, they spread out along the way. When you pass one, he starts following you. The other one waits down the way. Or surrounding you. This is the most common ploy of a pack of three or more. One will distract you while the others surround. They can swarm around you, but often just will casually drift in. A very serious danger sign is when a group is spaced out along a wall in a walkway. When at the midpoint, the wings will just fold in. Okay, so the attack. The attack is the criminal or violent person using force, or the threat of force to get what he wants. So the triangle of opportunity is complete and the assault or the threat of assault occurs. This is where you will submit because there's no fight to be had. You've left it too late and you cannot respond. So the first three stages have been achieved and there's no reason for the criminal not to use violence to get what he wants, which is oddly enough how that works. Sometimes they'll do it just because you were stupid and you deserve it. So understand the criminal psychology is very different to your and my psychology. So many robberies and rapes are committed with a simple threat or display of violence. So a violent emotional outburst won't physically harm the victim, but indicates that unless he or she cooperates, the victim will be hurt. Weapons can be displayed to convince you to cooperate. Other attacks are physical assaults, and such attacks can come both with and without warning. Tactically, strategically, if you're in the situation and you feel you have an opportunity, then fight. But you need to know how. You need some training for that, obviously. and some reasonably specialized training. This is something that I do. This is something I'm intending to do more of. So, yeah, working with multiples, working with these kind of scenarios. I've worked with people. I've learned from criminals. I studied criminals. I spoke to them and then simulated and worked these scenarios. So you can prevail in these circumstances. But if you're in this situation, you're probably not going to talk your way out of it. Although that's not impossible. Let's say. So in the most extreme, the criminal simply walks up to someone, points a weapon, and pulls the trigger. This does happen. I met someone who this happened to. That luckily the person was not killed. That was their friend that was attacked. But yeah, and this person then walked off and attacked someone else. They may well have been on drugs, mentally unwell. But I've been attacked by someone who was looking for the fight and on drugs, and they've just been fired. And yeah, they're coming regardless of what you do. They're coming. But again, legally defensible. You can describe all of these issues. You can define everything that happened and explain it in a court of law if you have to do serious damage to that person, because you may be forced to or may accidentally do so. Unfortunately, there's no way to determine which one you will encounter, but through awareness, you can reduce your risk heavily and extensively. I've had people who got away from kidnapping attempts. Van pulls up, tries to grab them, and they simply just responded. Now, what do you do when two, three, four guys try to grab you and you're a girl? You're 20 years old, 19 years old at university, 8 o'clock at night, grab you. Well, this girl that I worked with, she fought. There's no particular set of maneuvers like monkey steals peach and doing the crane hook. No, she just did not allow them. She refused to allow them to take her. She just refused. She was going to kick and bite and spit and scream and scratch everything that she could see, anything, any face, any nose, any teeth. She started kicking, screaming, punching, doing whatever. She refused to stand still. She refused to be lifted. When she was lifted, she kept kicking and kneeing, and she offered so much resistance they had to let her go. Eventually, people start to see, people start to hear. It draws attention. And these guys are at risk as well. Don't forget, CCTV, police, campus security, you name it. They've got their own stresses and you want to make this as hard as possible for them. So they weren't looking to stab her. They weren't looking to kill her. They're looking to take her somewhere. The issue is that stage 5, the reaction. Once you've been removed from a situation, from a location, taken somewhere else, you have no more control. They have complete control. And that's the danger. You have no idea. The chances that you're coming back, you don't know. So you fight. When they try to remove you from a place, you fight. Simple. Do not let them take you somewhere else. Make the decision, I am going to fight. And you simply just go wild. Okay, now, so an attack can turn from one type to another very quickly, and what is a threat can turn into deadly violence and vice versa. But at the same time, these can be turned around. So, reaction. Right? How does the criminal feel about what he has done? In the aftermath of robbing someone, the criminal decides on a whim to shoot you. This happens in South Africa, where I come from. They'll rob you. They'll come up to you at knife point, rob you, take your stuff, take your shoes, take your money, and they'll just stab you because why not? You're a pussy. That's how they view it. Or you didn't have enough money and they're punishing you, or they're punishing you for being stupid. It's a messed up psychology. Understand? So you don't have control over that. So try to avoid it at all costs, because you don't know what the unintended consequences are going to be here, right? So especially, you might say, cooperate fully. Don't offer resistance. There are occasions when this is very important. I've been through a situation where I was robbed at knife point, and there was nothing I could do. I was a dumbass. I should have known better. But that said, I was young. I was stupid, and there are times you do nothing. That is, if your gut tells you just do nothing, then do that. But there are other times when you may have to fight. You may have no choice because things could get much worse. So yeah, it's hard to tell, but when you're in the situation, you're gonna have to let your intuition guide you. Okay. Now, a robber can suddenly decide to rape his victim. Okay. And one of the most consistently dangerous of these reactions, these post-assault reactions, occurs amongst rapists. If the rapist feels that the rape did not empower him as he thought it would, he often turns violent. So nearly 80% of women who are seriously harmed by rapists are hurt after the sexual assault. So do understand, the risk is after the assault, generally not prior. So again, you need to factor in, I need to learn the first 3 phases, exit the situation, or if things are going to go bad, I need to fight, right? In any circumstance, until the criminal is completely out of sight, you're at risk of his reaction, even if you have totally cooperated. How many dash cam videos like the one we saw recently of this guy leaves, and then suddenly the guy turns around and comes screaming, this black dude comes screaming at the cop. He's made a meme this last week or so. You just don't know. They could just decide what the hell, and they come running back. They're down the street, and now they come back at you. So the unpredictability of the criminal's reaction is another reason why it is far easier to avoid violence than to try to extract yourself from the middle of it. Because the closer you are to stage 4, the harder it is to do so without major intervention or actual violence. So let me see, have I missed anything? So the 5 stages are inherent within crime and violence. What is important is to realize that the first 3 stages may not occur in that particular order. So remember, a violent and selfish person may find himself with a perfect opportunity or the ability to commit a rape, and suddenly the intent appears. So again, no conscious initial decision, but the circumstances developed. So think about AOI, apply that to the circumstances that you find yourself in. So you'd rather want to foil them than contest them, right? And you want to avoid using violence in all but the most extreme of circumstances. And do understand that 80% of people, and this is especially for the women, people who fight back, people who refuse to be taken, people who refuse to give up, they get away. Because you'd be amazed, most of these people are not looking to get into a knockdown, drag out fight. It's not a movie. These women who refuse to cooperate, who fight back, get away. So your safety is actually in resisting. So resist. Do not give in. So 2 major problems exist regarding self-defense. Knowing when to use it. How do we know when is the right time? And how can we be sure we're not overreacting or jumping at shadows? So we should all have reservations about using force. Much of this confusion is alleviated by having a proven and external set of standards to compare a situation against. And if you don't see the triangle, it is not time to use violence. Because when you are asked how you knew you were in immediate danger, have a better answer than, well, he gave me a dirty look, so I did something nasty to him. Not a good answer. So you have this system, this 5 stages system, the 5 stages of violent crime, which you can then articulate very clearly what was happening in a logical sequence and explain, this is what I did to prevent this. This is how he deliberately made sure that he violated that boundary, moved to the next one, violated that boundary, moved to the next one, violated the next boundary, and he did this 10 times in a row. I tried everything, I did everything I could. I was forced to take action. I was justified in taking action. So hopefully this is useful information. RJ says, Lloyd, I wish I had the means to contribute monetarily, but the ZAR is not on my side. Yeah, man, I know exactly what the ZAR is about, buddy. Thank you. But thank you. But if anyone else would like to contribute, I do appreciate the support. It's always very much appreciated, more than you realize. But yeah, hopefully all of you have gained something from this. Hopefully you are able to understand this. Maybe you will rewatch this, read through the notes, and understand it's common sense. There's a lot of simple common sense here. Obviously, we can't predict your particular circumstance, but there will be certain patterns that will play out, things that will be familiar, things that are going to occur. And you will be able to deal with these things if you follow some basic guidelines. Don't adopt at-risk behaviors. Don't get don't get blind drunk at a party and then pass out somewhere and then leave yourself open for abuse. Don't get aggressively drunk at a party. You start harassing people and then, start riling people up. There are at-risk behaviors that, of course, are going to place you at higher risk of being hurt. Try to mitigate those at-risk behaviors. Is this document accessible? Yeah, you cannot always fight your way out. Too many to deal with. Yeah, no, I work with people. To be honest, I did some work recently. I was working with some guys and I'm putting together some material for people on working with gangs, working against multiples. Because gangsters work against gangsters. Gangsters work against multiple assaults. So there's certain principles you can derive from looking at people who survive these kinds of assaults. You can interview them, talk to them, deconstruct what happened and try to extract from those situations, what did they do? They may not be able to articulate it, but once you understand, you can start to find patterns as you interview and discuss and analyze, and you can start to find things. And so that's the kind of thing that I've been working to do with people now. I've done it in the past, and hopefully you're in Poland again. So there are ways to be safer. There are strategies that work. And is the document accessible somewhere? Well, I did say that if I got 10 super chats, which I don't think I've ever had during a chat, during a live, I would post the documents publicly. So tell you what, I will post a link later in the description. This first document, I'll post this. Okay, this is the first document that I read. I will post that for everyone. But yeah, so I'll do that. And yeah, so anyway, so that's that. Also, I've taught a course on this. I've done extensive. Typically, it's 90 minutes. Usually, that's all I need. Could go a little bit longer, 2 hours, if there's lots of questions and scenarios people want to work through. But typically, within 90 minutes, you can teach people to be very safe, to understand this, and they'll come back and tell you, "Wow, I saw this, I saw that," and suddenly they'll say, "I noticed that, I saw that happening," and oh, that's what happened to my friend. You'll get a lot of that as you work through scenarios, as you describe, as you role play, and you take them through. Okay, let's do a stage 3. Here's what happens. And they go, I know this. I've seen it. This happened to me. And so on. You get a lot of that stuff. So, guys, yeah. And of course, in this modern day and age, dealing with the religion of peace, this might be helpful information. You just never know. There is that. The religion of peace leaves us very, very nervous and very worried and feeling very threatened. It's amazing why it's called the religion of peace when it leaves everyone filled with anxiety of being harmed. So yeah, guys. Guys, I will end it here. Hopefully, this has been of use to you. Thank you again for your time. I hope you'll have a wonderful week. I hope it's been a great and safe Easter for you. And yeah, all the Catholics, my condolences on the death of the Pope. Soon there'll be a new one, and so maybe a reason for hope. But of course, this Easter, I believe, had record turnouts at church. I've seen lots of posts on social media, people saying that church turnout was spectacular this last weekend. People, I think there's a change. People are realizing, we need to get back to basic Christian principles. So, guys, stay safe, and I will see you all soon. Take care, guys. Good night.